So hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's session of Ready for Pre-K. My name is Drew, and I'm the manager of Birth to 5 programming here at DCPS. I am so thrilled that you are joining us for tonight's session. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items that I want to go over with the group. As you know, we're using Zoom to host tonight's session. And so throughout the session, we invite you to enter your questions and comments into the Q&A. You're also welcome to unmute if you're comfortable and ask your questions. We do love hearing your voices, so please don't be shy about that. We are recording tonight's session because we post these on the DCPS YouTube channel afterwards for anyone who wasn't able to join us for the live session. So for that reason, your cameras are currently disabled. You're welcome to turn them on if you like, but do know that the sessions are being recorded and will be posted later. If you need any tech support during the session, you can enter your questions or comments into the chat and I can help you out there. And we are also offering simultaneous interpretation in Spanish this evening. So I'm gonna pause for a quick announcement for those who would like to utilize the interpretation service. Sarah, do you mind to go ahead and read these instructions for us to help folks use that setting if they like?
Yes, sure, no problem. All right, en una computadora, pues hay dos opciones. En una computadora, pulse en el icono del globo de interpretación en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Pulse en el icono español, Spanish. Pulse en mute original audio, silenciar el audio original para silenciar todos los demás idiomas. Otra opción en un dispositivo móvil, tableta, pulse en los tres puntitos que dicen more, más, arriba a la derecha. Pulse en Language Interpretation, interpretación del lenguaje. Y número 3, pulse en español y pulse Mute Original Audio, silenciar el audio original para silenciar todos los demás idiomas.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
De nada.
All right, so we like to start off all of our Ready for Pre-K sessions with some general community agreements for our time together in the evening. We are committed to making sure that this forum is a place where everyone feels safe and welcome and respected. So on that note, we ask that during these sessions, everyone just be kind, be patient, and be open. All right, let's go ahead and get started. With that, I would love to take a moment for tonight's facilitators to go ahead and introduce themselves before we dive into the content about language development. Monique, would you like to start us off?
Sure. My name is Monique Russell, and I am an early childhood instructional specialist and also mom of 2.
Thanks, Monique. Sarah?
Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Cirilla, also an early childhood instructional specialist, not a mom yet.
And Cora.
And hi, everyone. I'm Cora, and I'm a speech language pathologist with Strong Start, which is DC's early intervention program.
Awesome. Thank you guys all so much for joining us this evening. I'm so excited for all of the parents and caregivers who are joining us tonight to learn from your expertise and support. And so with that, I think I'm handing this first part over to Sarah.
All right, thank you, Drew. So what is language development? During our last session in the previous month, we discussed young children's social emotional development. During that session, we talked about children's growing awareness of their own emotions and the emotions of others, as well as ways to support them with expressing and responding to strong emotions appropriately. Language and communication skills are essential to supporting this and all other areas of development. So tonight, we're going to be focusing on how we can boost children's language development at home. So what exactly do we mean when we say language development? Language is the ability to both use and understand spoken words or signs. Language is all about passing ideas from one person to another. There are 2 main areas of language development, expressive and receptive. These 2 methods work together to help children learn to communicate with others effectively. Expressive communication is the use of language through speech, gestures, sign language, or alternative means like a tablet or other assistive technology to communicate wants, needs, thoughts, and ideas. An easy way to remember expressive communication is to think of it as children expressing themselves. Receptive communication is the ability to understand spoken language and visual communication. Receptive communication can be thought of as children receiving information by hearing it and by seeing it. For example, young children follow simple directions, pointing to objects in their environment when named, or identifying objects and actions in pictures. That's receptive language. Countless studies show the correlation between children's language skills and their later success. The research is clear that children with stronger foundations in communication and language do better in school. Our pre-K teachers would agree. When asked what parents and caregivers should focus on prior to children starting pre-K 3, social emotional skills were first followed closely by language and communication. Building children's language skills is essential for supporting all other areas of learning and development. Children with strong foundations in language and communication are better able to form relationships with teachers and peers, express and understand emotions, follow routines and directions, comprehend stories and lessons, make connections and problem solve, and understand early literacy concepts. These skills are used throughout the day in pre-K and can really support a smooth transition into school. And now I'm going to hand it over to Cora.
Sounds good, thanks. So thinking about your own child, since we are geared toward parents and caregivers tonight, I'm curious about in your daily routines, what language or communication moments stand out to you? So as we talk about this, just be thinking about that for your own child, the children in your life.
I love that. And if anybody wants to put any favorite communication moments into the chat or unmute, you are absolutely welcome to. We love hearing your anecdotes.
So just going over some communication milestones. When children are between 0 and 1 year old, we expect them to start by cooing, so making open vowel sounds, and babbling, starting to combine consonant and vowel sounds. And around this age, children begin to use nonverbal cues. So expressively, they might reach or point toward something that they might want. Receptively, they start to respond to their own name. Very young babies begin to turn in the direction of their parents' voices. And then as babies get a little bit older, they might begin to point to familiar people. Expressively, when children are between 1 and 1.5, so 18 months old, they typically start trying to imitate words that others say. They might say a few single words. Usually we expect words for both caregivers, as well as 1 or 2 other words. The example here is uh-oh. We do hear a lot of exclamations at this age. So things like uh-oh and wow. At this age, it's typical to hear children saying between 3 and 20 words. Receptively, 1 to 1.5-year-olds follow simple commands. And typically they can identify 1 to 3 body parts. So that's like, where's your nose? Where are your eyes? Between 1.5 and 2, a child's vocabulary continues to grow. And once a child has a base vocabulary of about 50 words, we typically begin to hear 2-word phrases. No night night is the example used here, which I love. We all know that 1.5 to 2-year-olds are really big on expressing their autonomy. So no becomes a very, very popular word at this age. Receptively, children between 1.5 and 2 begin to point to pictures in books when they hear the pictures named. Typically, they enjoy listening to stories. Their attention span is growing, so they can sit for the duration of a full short book. And typically, children around this age can identify up to 5 body parts. We can Perfect, thanks. Moving on to the preschool years, children between 2 and 3 typically have a vocabulary of 50 to 250 words. They can usually use 3 to 4 word phrases. They can identify multiple body parts, and they can follow 2-step directions. So things like go get your cup and put it on the table. Children who are between 3 and 4 years old have a typical vocabulary of 800 to 1,500 words and are using 4 to 5 word sentences. They can understand even higher order multi-step directions, 2 and 3-step directions. And they know pairs of simple opposite concepts, so cold and hot or big and small. And then moving in to the kindergarten years, 4 and 5-year-olds, they typically have a vocabulary of 900 to 2,000 words. They're able to tell simple stories, and they speak in longer and more complex sentences. At this age, receptively, most children understand positional words like above and below, and are able to understand and follow more complex stories.
I love that. And I think one thing that I always love to point out with any of these milestones is that when we say milestones such as follows 2-step directions, we mean, can your child understand the directions? We know that a lot of children may, when they're not in a great mood, choose not to follow those directions, but when they are at their best, are they able to comprehend them? Just as a caveat, I know sometimes we're like, all the time or just sometimes.
Definitely.
All right, so even though this session is not focused on multi-language development, we did want to take a moment to touch on this topic, as we know many children and families in DC speak or are learning multiple languages. In fact, 25% of children in our pre-K classrooms speak 2 or more languages. The developmental milestones we have discussed apply to all children regardless of what language they learn first. Children develop these skills in every language. Being multilingual has several advantages. Proficiency in their home language helps children to establish a positive self-identity and connect with their family and culture. Children who are bilingual also have increased cognitive flexibility, or the ability to solve problems and think about things in different ways. Learning 2 languages at the same time does not hinder a child's development. In fact, can help children excel. Sometimes children may have stronger receptive or expressive skills in one language over another, but this is normal. Do not worry. Dual language learners may take a bit longer to move through some stages of language development, but they are not confused. It's not holding them back in any way. All of the strategies that we discussed today can be used to support children regardless of what language is spoken at home.
I love that. Sarah, I wanted to take just a minute to ask you a couple questions about dual language acquisition. When participants were putting their questions into registration, there were a lot of questions around dual language development. And so one of them was just, what is the best way to introduce a second language when the second language isn't spoken in the home? So I'm assuming this is a family who wants to, maybe introduce English if Spanish is spoken at home, or vice versa. And so what would be some tips for starting that?
Yes, so the first thing that comes to mind is finding bilingual books. So it could be where we have the picture books, a lot of times really focused on vocabulary. That's really common that children would be seeing in the home and around school in their community. So in that case, like the example that you just used, if the children speak Spanish at home, well, then this would be an English-Spanish bilingual book. And even when parents are trying to sound out and they're pointing and interacting with the book with their child, that's still introducing them to this new language. And so definitely bilingual books, music. And again, we do want to limit our screen time, of course, and still be very interactive with children, but being able to find educational and really enjoyable shows on TV. And that way children are experiencing English in the home, but also upholding their Spanish language with their family. So those are the first really strong starts. And then again, if there's someone in the community, maybe a neighbor that speaks English and they also have children, really kind of setting up play dates and just allowing children to play and hear language all around. So yeah, I think that's a great start.
I love that. Thank you so much, Sarah. And Monique, I know that you have children who have been acquiring a second language as well. Any additional tips or tricks that you'd like to share?
I would say to not be afraid of making mistakes if you are trying to work with your child for them to learn a language that you are not a fluent speaker in, to go ahead and use that language in the home also and practice some of those words with them. But then also, like Sarah mentioned, to create some opportunities for them to have more experiences with native fluent speakers of that language so they can hear a stronger language model.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I think my screen share stopped for just a second, but it should be back.
Yes,
All
it
right.
is back.
Perfect.
Yes, looks like we're good.
Wonderful. I'll go ahead and move on, but participants who are on tonight, please don't be afraid to put anything in the chat as we go. We will have a Q&A at the end, but we welcome your questions throughout as well.
So what can we do at home throughout our daily routine to help children develop language and communication skills? When we talk about strengthening language development, we are really talking about being responsive. It's about responding to children's efforts to communicate, modeling language and communication strategies, and encouraging them when they get stuck. As caregivers of young children, you're already doing so many things that are helping to build your child's brain and their language skills. Let's look at some of those intentional interactions and talk some more about how they fit into your daily routine.
All right, so one of the best ways to build language with your child is really just talking to them, engaging in conversation with them. So we're going to take a look at a video that features a mom and her daughter, and they're sharing a really meaningful language experience as part of a daily routine.
What you say? You sure did. You are a big girl. You know that? Yeah. You went potty and you told mommy you had to go potty. You know what that means? Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. But it's okay. We're just gonna give you a ponytail for tonight. My car gave you some twisties. All this hair, baby. What did you do with Auntie Cara? Huh? What you do with Auntie Cara? Did you have fun?
Yeah,
You did?
I got some makeup.
You got some makeup? She put makeup on you, girl.
She put makeup.
Oh, really? What kind of makeup?
One
Huh?
makeup.
What kind of makeup Auntie Cara put on you, Jade? Tell mommy. It's okay.
I got eyes.
Oh, she put makeup on your eyes. Oh, did she? Did you tell her how old you was?
No.
Did you tell her you was 1?
No?
Oh, you didn't, so it's your fault. Oh,
No.
okay. I see. So you just go away for the weekend and you just do what you want to do, huh? Wearing makeup and stuff. How old are you?
1.
I know. So don't you think that's a little too young for makeup? Huh? You don't think that's too young for makeup? I can't take me serious either, girl.
The baby. I'm hard down.
Huh?
I'm hard down.
You want the baby to lay down?
I want the baby to lay down.
Okay, lay your baby down. Put your baby up there so she can lay down. Is it night-night time for baby?
I'm going to.
Hold on. Oh, you want her? Uh-oh.
right, so let's look at that. That is a ton of language happening there. So there are several ways that parents and other caregivers can help build language skills. And they're really easy to do in any environment and with children of any age. So we're going to talk a little bit about these specific strategies. All right, the first strategy, serve and return. It's kind of like hitting a tennis ball back and forth or ping pong ball. You say something and your child responds verbally or non-verbally. And then you say something else, or you ask a question and your child responds, and so on. So there were a lot of examples of this in the video that we just saw. The mom doesn't just talk at the child, so they really have a back and forth conversation, right? So those conversation turns are something that really help build language. Next, nonverbal cues, such as pointing and gestures. When your child points to something, take time to talk to them about what it is and how it's used. And then when you talk about something, make sure that you point to it, using gestures or signs when you talk to your child. For example, you could point to your lips when you are telling your child that it's time to eat, and then they can start to associate that with that image with eating food or being hungry. And then they remember that the next time that they want a snack. You can also talk about yourself and what you're doing when you're around your child. So this is called self-talk. And the best way to describe this is thinking of yourself as a chef on a cooking show, where you're really just describing exactly what you're doing as you're doing it. You know, for example, now I'm stirring the big wooden spoon. You can hold up that spoon or point to it. And now I'm turning off the stove because it's done cooking. And this helps children connect words and actions. It also gives them an opportunity to learn new vocabulary and context. So for example, if I'm baking something, I might say, oh, now I'm whisking the eggs. See, this is called whisking. If you look at the photo on the right, we see the man changing the diaper of the baby. What kind of self-talk might he use in this scenario? You can come off of mute and share your voice or put it in the chat. What do you think he might say as self-talk in this scenario?
I love it. Do we have any brave souls out there who are willing to do this one? I have a feeling this is something you're already doing at home, especially if you are a caregiver or a parent or spend any time with little ones. You probably have done this many a time, doing self-talk while you change a child's diaper. You might start with something like, okay, first I'm going to put you on the changing table. Now we're going to take off these pants. Now I'm going to, take off your diaper or give you a wipe. Oh, it's cold. Right, move forward to some more strategies. There you go, Monique.
Thank you. All right, so another thing that we can do is talk about your child, right? So use words to describe what they're doing and tell them about their actions and identify their emotions for them. If your child is stacking blocks, for example, you might say, oh, you're putting the red block on top of the blue block, or you're stacking them carefully, one at a time. We call this parallel talk. So parallel talk is similar to being a sportscaster who's describing all of the action that's happening in a game, while self-talk, we're really talking about what we're doing, more like that chef on the cooking show. You can talk to your child even if they're not using words yet, or they're using sounds that they're attempting words, but they're not quite there yet, or they're using minimal words. And you can do what we call repeat and extend. And we did see an example of this at the very beginning of the video, where the little girl says something, we can't quite understand what she says, and the mom repeats it and then adds to it. For example, if your child holds up their cup and they say, wah, wah, you can say water. You would like some more water, right? We repeat what they're trying to say and then add more to it and extend that. You can also try asking open-ended questions. Those are questions that they require more than a one-word response, or they're questions that don't have a right or wrong answer, right? For example, if we're reading a story at bedtime, an open-ended question might be, what do you think will happen next in the story? Right? There's no wrong or right answer to that, and it requires more than one word to answer it. We can also use more complicated sentences and words and take time to expand on what our children are trying to communicate with us. For example, if we're taking a walk and the child sees a dog and they say, big dog, then we can say, yes, that's a big black dog. We can also take time to introduce new words during these expansions by changing some of the words that we might use. For example, if the child says, big bulldozer, we can teach them some synonyms, some alternative words for big, and add to that and say, that is a big bulldozer. It's huge, or it's gigantic. So let's take a look at the picture over on the screen, the mom with the little boy, or the lady with the little boy. And let's say he says, it fly. What are some ways that we might be able to repeat and extend his speech? Do we have any volunteers to try it out? So you might say, yes, it does fly. The helicopter is flying in the sky. So if you remember nothing else from the session, the most important thing is thinking about the power of engaging in conversation with your little one each day. So we can't overstate the importance of talking with your child throughout the day and exposing them to language by playing, singing, reading stories. So like we mentioned earlier, learning is an emotional process. So the best way to communicate with the children is by talking about topics that they're really interested in, things that they love to talk about, and motivating them to conversation that way. I see we have somebody in the chat who has an example showing excitement by saying, wow, it's flying, and then asking, where do you think it's going to go? I read that as a great example of following up with an open-ended question to help them to expand their language. Thank you. And I see Deborah, if you have one to share, please go ahead and share it in the chat. We'll come. Oh, I see another one. Communicate the process, make concrete by your actions. Oh, I see, Deborah, I'm sorry. Deborah was giving an example for the self-talk at the changing table when you're changing the baby. It's time to be changed, and then explaining the process, step by step, what you're doing. Thank you, Deborah. So we're going to take a moment to think about all of the information that we've covered and use this time for a Q&A. So if there are questions that you have for our team, feel free to open up your mic and ask those, or put them in the chat. And I do believe that we also have a few questions that were submitted in advance.
Yes, absolutely. While folks are thinking of their questions that they might like to ask, I would love to share a couple that were put in registration. So we had a great conversation amongst our own team about how to answer this question accurately. And so I'd love to throw it out there for all of you to respond to, which is, do you believe that screen time impacts babies and toddlers' ability to speak? So Cora and Sarah, Monique, any of you can feel free to chime in about thoughts on screen time and how it impacts language development.
Definitely. So I think that the biggest thing about screen time is the quantity of it. It's totally a personal choice for each individual family, whether or not to allow screen time. Some families choose to not do it before 2. Some families choose to integrate it into their routine. But I think that it's important to note that the biggest limitation of screen time is that it's not reciprocal. So a lot of times in early childhood programming, the characters will break the fourth wall and talk to the child, like in the audience. But no matter how much they do that, they can't respond to the individual child in the way that a communication partner can. So you are missing the reciprocity of that interaction. So you don't want a situation where screen time is replacing reciprocal interactions. That's the biggest thing for me. And then keeping in mind the quality of the programming. We have so much educational programming available to children. And we're really lucky in that way that we have programs available that are really research-based. So looking into that for your family, I think, is helpful for a lot of parents.
That's great. Sarah and Monique, anything you would like to add to that, or even maybe some examples of high quality programs that you could recommend if a parent was looking for an example?
Sure. So, and I'm with Cora. I think sometimes it's hard to totally have no screen time in your life, especially if you watch it yourself. And so as a parent, sometimes you need something to help you out, right? So I know I turn on some screen time sometimes to help keep the kiddo active so that I can cook dinner or something like that. I think that the quality of that programming is really important. So there are shows such as Cocomelon where they really use science to kind of hook children into it, and the effect of that is not it's not a positive effect. It doesn't help them with language development, and it makes them in that time maybe more passive. And so I think we're looking at something like Daniel Tiger, where the characters are talking to the children. It's a slower pace. They're leaving wait time for children to respond. Like I think Cora talked about breaking that fourth wall. For younger children, toddlers, Songs for Little with Miss Rachel, where she really follows kind of a slow pace. She incorporates sign language. They do a lot of close-ups on her mouth so that you can see exactly how things are formed, how words are formed. There was another one I was thinking of. Oh, Bluey is another one where, again, slow paced, a lot of great social emotional things happening there also. And so just thinking about the quality of the screen time. There's a great website that I like to use to screen things before I even watch them myself to see if it's something that I'd want to expose my children to, called commonsensemedia.org. And I can add that to the chat. And they rate shows and they'll tell you if there is any exposure to violence or to inappropriate language, or they have all these different kinds of things that they look for in shows if there's diverse representation. And so that can be a really helpful tool just to find things that to even look further at. The other thing I think is it's really important to note that you can't replace, like there's no show that can replace what you can get in conversation with a live person, right? And so that we're not using screens at the detriment of conversation with live people. So what I'll even do when I do have to turn on Miss Rachel with my toddler is I will talk along with Miss Rachel, and follow along so that I'm also engaging in that and singing the songs and doing the motions with him while I'm cleaning up the kitchen or whatever it is that I'm doing, and limit that, so that he's not watching an hour of it, but maybe we're doing 10 minutes of that and then back to something else.
I love that. Thank you guys for those responses. Sarah, I think that this would probably be a great question for you, drawing on your language expertise around dual language learners. When children are maybe learning a second language and they mispronounce words or their grammar is slightly off, what should parents or caregivers, should they correct that? And if so, what is the most appropriate way to do that?
This is a really great question. And it ties to what Monique had mentioned earlier. I think of repeating and extending the child's language. So this is the strategy that we really want to keep in mind. So if the child makes a statement or asks a question, and there is a word that isn't pronounced correctly, or it's not grammatically correct, you can repeat it, right? So let's say they tried to say something and you just repeat, oh, you would like me to pick up the ball. Okay, here is the ball. But maybe they pronounced that incorrectly, the ball, or even how they said that they would like it, right? So just thinking about how can I model that in a very warm way so that the child, we want to make sure that they're still very confident and they're risk-taking in their language, and to just continue to be a model for them and not worry about those little mistakes, because exactly that, I mean, that's how we learn. So with that repetition and the extension, it's already a great language model in general, but especially for our multilingual learners, just to hear that and put that in context, that's really the way to go.
I was going to add the same thing goes for speech delayed children as well as dual language learners. Exactly the same advice. You don't want to be correcting, you want to be modeling and adding.
And I want to share something that Miss Debbie has added because she's unable to come off of mute. She, in regards to screen time, she said she believes too many people have made screen time the babysitter. And although the screen time may be educational, too much of it and without your engagement is not good. I think we all would agree with that here. So thank you for lifting that up, Miss Debbie. And then Monique shared commonsensemedia.org. Thank you for that.
Great. And another question kind of around both language development and dual language learning. How can you tell if maybe a child is potentially has a language delay or is just in the stage of language development that's maybe a silent period if they're learning a second language? What are some, I'd be curious to hear from you all about some different things to look for to help give you clues about what it might be.
Definitely. For language delay, the biggest thing that we look for is acquisition of new words. So a child might have 1 or 2 words, but we want them to consistently be adding new words throughout the first year. Typically, when a child is not doing that, or if they ever lose words, that's when we recommend referral to early intervention. And then also a child who maybe understands a lot, has really great receptive skills, but hasn't yet realized that words are their default form of communication. So maybe they have a handful of words, but they're not yet using them to request or not yet using them to label objects, just kind of using them imitatively. So those are the biggest kind of signs to look for to see if referral for intervention is necessary.
Great. Thank you. I'm looking through some of these other questions that were submitted. There were so many great ones in there. Oh, a question about, so if you suspect that your child does have a speech delay or communication delay, depending on what age they are, who do you go to and when, and how do you start that process?
Yeah, so in DC, you can, for birth to 3, self-refer to the Strong Start program. That information is all online. There's an online form, and then there's also a hotline that you can call. If your child is 3 or older, you can refer to DCPS Early Stages, which is DCPS's Early Childhood Evaluation team. And they have an all online, super user-friendly referral form. So they will evaluate your child in person. If your child is about to turn 3, Strong Start and Early Stages work together. So you'll do an initial evaluation with Strong Start. But if they qualify for services at their initial service plan meeting, Early Stages will be present and be able to talk about the transition to school before the child is even 3.
Great. Thank you for that. Any other questions that folks want to put in the chat or come off mute? Oh, there's a question about resources to encourage children's language development. And I know we've talked about like some great options for television programming, media that you can use. I also just dropped the link in the chat for the DC Public Library STAR program, which stands for Sing, Talk, and Read. And they have a number of free programming at the library for ages 0 to 3 and even beyond that incorporates music and movement and reading, and it really supports children's language development as well.
So another resource I'd
go
like to
ahead.
share, Drew, is not specifically language, but the Imagination Library through the DC Public Library are free books from ages birth to age 5. And if you sign up for the program, then the Imagination Library sends a book, a free book, a wonderful high quality children's book tailored to the age of your child every month. And usually in that book, there are also some questions to help you think about questions to help your child with language development as you discuss the book together. So it's a really great resource.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that resource so much. And I have to say that I did feel so heartbroken when my daughter turned 5 and I realized that that was the last book we would be getting in the mail because we have enjoyed them so much. There's a question in the chat from Ms. Debbie that says, are there any suggestions about evidence of too much screen time, virtual autism? Debbie, do you want to share a little bit more about what you mean by that? I know you might not be able to come off mute, but Cora, I'm going to let you take that. Any suggestions about how much screen time is too much screen time, or any sort of long-term effects that we haven't talked about already?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot more evidence needed. There's currently not enough quality evidence that suggests that the effects are that profound. I think that we are still continuously learning about what the long-term effects could be. But it's certainly not, at a point where it's appropriate to call the effects of too much screen time like a clinical diagnosis. Great,
thank you. There was a question that I thought was interesting too that I would love to hear responses to about baby sign and about, does baby sign language help with young children's communication skills, or does it, or if they don't have a speech delay, is there any harm in introducing it?
Yeah, no, not at all. I love baby sign as a tool to bridge the gap between receptive communication and expressive communication. It just gives another modality, another way for children to understand and express non-verbally what they want.
Wonderful. And there's definitely some resources, free resources online that we can follow up with too. Anybody who's joined the session will automatically get our newsletter, and we try to share resources that are specific to the content that we've talked about. So be sure, if there's additional resources that you want, go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll make sure that those come out in the newsletter, because there are some really great free resources for baby sign language available both in person and online as well. Any other questions or comments that folks want to enter into the chat or unmute, or for our facilitators this evening? Anything else that is on your mind that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I just want to go back to Debbie's question about the evidence of too much screen time. I think, we are seeing, particularly in light of the pandemic and not having as much face-to-face interaction, that there have been maybe a little bit slower language development. However, I think it's important to remember that the research shows that autism is largely genetic. So there's no evidence that it's caused by screen time. And I'll give an anecdote. So my oldest son is autistic and was not allowed any screen time before the age of 2, but still autistic.
And on that note, we've heard from some specialists and parents too, that sometimes for children with language delays or who are on the autism spectrum, sometimes if it's high quality programming and we have an adult who's supporting, repeating that information or modeling that information and making it interactive, that it can actually be a tool to support that language development too. So I think it just requires being thoughtful and educated and, picking high quality programming as well.
For sure.
All right. So we'll start to close out our session this evening. I'll drop a couple more links in the chat. So Monique, do you want to take this one and then I will close us out?
Sure, Drew, did you want to put the slideshow back on?
Oh yes, sorry, I didn't realize that it was no longer sharing.
It's showing here on my end. I see.
Is it?
Oh,
Oh,
that's
good.
so weird. It's not showing on my end. Okay. Oh, now I
Good.
see it. Okay, that was me. I pressed something.
Not at all. Thank you.
All right, so now that we've covered a whole lot of information about language development and how to support language development with the children, let's think about what you would like to focus on moving forward. So if you can share in the chat or come off onto your microphone and do it, what's one strategy that you'd like to try out to help build your child's language? So any specific skill that you feel like you and your child are ready to take on.
To jog the group's memory, just because I know that we shared so much information. So there was like serve and return strategy, open-ended questions, repetition and extension.
Hi everyone, I'm Shemaya.
Hi Shemaya.
I have a 3-year-old daughter by the name of Empress. Anyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a challenge I would like to take on with Empress, she's 3 years old. This is her first year in pre-K3. And I think a challenge I would like to take on with her is allowing her to read the story as best as she can. That's something that I've kind of moved into to see if she can grasp just to check on her comprehension skills of the picture and what's going on instead of reading the book to her, because I've been reading to her since she was a baby. So I've started doing that just to see how her putting the image with what's going on in the book together, how that's working for her, if she can tell the story.
That's a wonderful strategy, Shemaya. Retelling the story, pretending to read, and
Yes.
incorporating those different reading behaviors.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I love hearing everybody's little ones' voices in the background. Makes me not feel so alone. I've got like a dog barking and kiddos talking.
Yes.
I love it. Anybody else want to share a strategy that that you're willing to try with your children to support their language development? Anything that made you think this evening? All right.
So as we close tonight, if you have questions or concerns, I know that Cora referred to some of these organizations or agencies earlier. But if you have any questions or concerns about your child's language development, or really any area of their development learning, you can reach out to Strong Start. Strong Start is for children who from birth to age 3. For children who are ages 3 to 5, you can reach out to Early Stages. And at any age, you can talk to your child's pediatrician for support.
Wonderful. I want to thank all of our presenters this evening, Sarah, Cora, and Monique. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your expertise. Parents and caregivers, and those of you with little ones in your lives who joined tonight, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any follow-up questions, either immediately or you think of something down the line, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can email us absolutely anytime, and we can put our DCPS email into the chat. You can also visit readyforpk.org, which is our website, and that link is in the chat as well. And on readyforpk.org, you can find a variety of resources. We've got some videos with our puppet friend Scribbles, who models interactions that you can easily do at home with your child. And we also have information about the My School DC lottery that's coming up. So if you are joining and you don't have a child yet in pre-K 3 or pre-K 4, we're going to be providing more information about how to enroll them in pre-K 3 next year. So stay tuned for that information. And then I also want to let you know that you'll see a QR code on the screen. And this is our attendee survey, and it just takes a minute to fill out. And we really, really, really appreciate your feedback, because your responses inform the content of the sessions that we provide. So you choose all of the topics that we discuss, and it also helps us to tailor these to make sure that they're meaningful and a good use of your time. And as a bonus, just by taking the survey, you win the chance to receive a bundle of children's books mailed to your home, which is a lot of fun. So we hope that you will take the survey and visit our website and reach out to us if you have absolutely any questions at all. We appreciate you being here, and have a great night.